So here we go. So firstly, all the academics here, all the researchers here, I'm not an academic, nor am I a researcher, okay? So I'm going to give you this from 2 points of view, and I'll take questions after that. So let's begin. I think I'll start with the present. I'll start with March, and then I'll try to give you a macro view as to how I understand, firstly, in the short term, what happened, and then what's the big picture. So let's begin with the short term, what happened. Now, some of you would already know this, but I think it's important to put the context there. What really happened? First is a 21-day lockdown was announced with 4 hours notice. I'm not going to make my interaction with you political today, even though I got parliament in the background, so I'm not going to get into the politics of it. That wouldn't be fair because, as you know, I'm a member of the second largest opposition party and the parliamentary party leader of this party, Trinamool, run by Mamata Banerjee. So when you give 4 hours notice for a 21-day lockdown without much planning or any planning, I think that was the big first problem. Now, there's no use only me stating the problem. What could have been a possible solution to this problem? One solution could have been is that you needed to give these workers some time. And how could you have given them this time? Let me talk to you first about a practical solution through the Indian Railways. This is my first solution. As I said, we need to be constructive and not just doing opposition for the sake of doing opposition. So the first suggestion is that the Indian Railways has a daily carrying capacity to carry 23 to 24 million passengers every day. Half of those numbers, that's about 12 million, are use suburban services in the cities. The other half, that is still 12 million, are for long distance travel. I hope you're understanding my point, that so 12 million can be transported every day, long distance, that's the capacity. Assume we had followed the norms of social distancing and say we would have moved half the number of people. So 24 million is your total capacity, 12 million is your long distance trains, half of 12 million is 6 million. 6 million into 4, 5, 6 days would have given you an opportunity to move 4, 5 million a day. So 5 million a day, in 6 days, you'd have completed 30 million passengers. People would have gone back to their destinations. There's a very important statistic here. When you announced the lockdown, there were 550 corona positive cases in India, 550. Now, when you're going for an unlocking, opening up, the cases have crossed 2.5 lakhs. Now they've crossed even 3 lakhs. So when you decided to move the workers, and you could have thought it out differently, but instead, what did you do? You first said nobody will move. Then you said buses will run for Delhi, UP, etc. And then in May, you came up with the idea of trains. So that's my first point. By the way, I don't like the term migrant workers. I don't know what your views are on it. And if I say something today which you don't like, we can disagree. Please don't get touchy about it. So I prefer the term guest workers, mehman. So guest workers is a better term than migrant workers. Having said that, let me come back to this point about having moved them. Now, when you decided to move the migrant worker, when you decided to move the guest worker, then you decided the state government has to accept those workers. Obviously. Here there's an interesting point. The state government is the implementing authority. In other words, if the guest worker, when he or she arrives at a spot, at the platform, at the arrival platform. The screening has to be done. Who will do it? State government. 2, you will go into home quarantine. Who will supervise that? State government. Number 3, you will do quarantine, institutional quarantine. Who will do that? State government. And if you have some signs, if you're symptomatic, then you have to go to a hospital. Who will do that? State government. So this is the broad problem. That's why I gave you the solution in a non-political way, is that the first, not a mistake, it was a blunder. Father in his introduction was saying the migrant workers were disappointed. I think Father was a little soft. Disappointed? No. I think they were devastated because we abandoned them. When I say we, not only the government in power, we as a society abandoned them. I'll come back to the question about how this was, because what really happened, like for example, in my state, from Bengal, we managed to get out 1,000 rupees each to 2 lakh guest workers, 1,000 rupees in their bank account. And many states had to take care of the workers from the different states. So that was the situation. And I think those pictures which you saw tell the story the best. This is as far as my understanding goes of how I see this situation. Because eventually, those same guest workers who were kept in different states, they were sent back from May the 1st. You know what happened, because the trains after that were sent. My question is, why didn't you send them back on the 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th, 20th of March and then go for a total lockdown? Otherwise, now you've sent them back. The Lord only knows how many of those are positive. And you saw those pictures, 80 people died. That's the official figure. I don't know how many actually died, maybe more than that. They were packed into the trains. There was no social distancing. You can see those pictures there on the net. Leave the short term out now. This is what has happened, and I've spent 15 minutes telling you about this. I want to try and give you a perspective of beyond the last 3 weeks. Beyond the last 3 weeks. Let's get to the census first. The 2011 census broadly talks about the number being about 50 million. A more realistic estimate, people say, is anywhere between 80 to 100 million. And that's why the Chief Minister of Bengal suggested about 10 days ago, you please directly, no questions asked, put 10,000 rupees into each bank account. If you put 10,000 rupees into 1 lakh people's bank account, that's 10,000 crores. How can that be done? Well, one suggestion we made for that, of putting the money in, where are you suddenly going to get maybe 8,000, 10,000 crores? So we suggested that there's an MP LAD fund, which is a local area development. All MPs, Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, that fund has now been suspended because of COVID. 5 crores goes to each MP every year. So for 2 years, it's been suspended now for the next 2 years. So our suggestion was you take 5 into 2, that's 10 crores of 800 MPs. You've already taken that money, 8,000 crores. So our suggestion was you put that money into this unorganized sectors through direct benefit transfer. I'm coming back now I want to talk to you a little about my understanding after doing some reading on this fascinating subject. As I was saying in the beginning, in all this negativity, there's also some positivity. One piece of positivity is we've suddenly got to know about guest workers. And the other positive, of course, is that we wouldn't be having this session if everything was hunky-dory. I'm so happy that I've got an opportunity and a privilege like this to talk to young people. And if there are any academics here, I've been told, and there are researchers, please don't take me too seriously, okay? Because politicians are always generalists. So I still managed to do some study on the subject, but let me try and give you my perspective. And you may have a different perspective. That's absolutely fine in a democracy. So I was giving you the 2011 census and I said, yes, we'd come to about 100 million. Now, the figure which is generally acceptable is about 25 to 30 million interstate migrants, as opposed to intrastate, means migrating within the state. So where does this migration happen? Studies have revealed that where rural population is dense, that's where the move out happens. And where the density of population is high, that's where you have out migration. Pause a thought there, but there's an interesting, I can't have a question and answer here because there are so many of you, and that's nice. But if you leave this migration as in migrant worker or guest worker out, the actual highest number of people, this is going to surprise you, who actually move within the state or from one state to the other. Guess what? People who actually move within the state or from one state to another, they are not migrant workers. The biggest movement, and there's some data to prove this, the biggest movement for that is women getting married. Yes, that is also a form of migration. Obviously, it's a kind of permanent migration. But if you look at those numbers are huge. As I said, moving from one district to another district after marriage, and then you stay there. And of course, the other one is from one state to the other state. Now let's come back to our guest workers. Enough data to suggest that 8 out of every people who is persons who are a guest worker, migrant worker, 8 men, 2 women. 8 men, 2 women. And if you do get a chance, there's a gentleman called Chinmay Tumbe, T-U-M-B-E, IIM Ahmedabad professor. He's written a fabulous book, A History of Migration. And there they talk about the duration of the migration. And the duration of the migration is actually can be divided up into 3 parts. The short-term migrant, which is 2 to 3 months. The long-term migrant, which is up to 10 months. Typically, who would these long-term migrants be? They'd be our security guards, they'd be construction workers, long-term migrants. And traditionally, they come and go back round about the monsoon. In fact, now people are talking about, when are these migrant workers going to come back? When will they come back? Now that they've all gone. Once we believe that there'll be, perhaps some believe that there'll be a wage increase, so they'll have to come back. They will not come back now in the monsoons, July, August. Lots of them from Bihar. In fact, Bihar and UP have the largest, as you know. So maybe after Chhath Puja, that is, I think, September, October. So the short term, 2 to 3 months, the long term, up to 10 months, security guards, construction workers, and that kind of thing. And then, of course, the third one is the permanent migrant. There's some very interesting data now, so available. For example, in Azamgarh in UP, with a survey which was done there, 1/4 of households, 1/4, 1 on every 4 households has a migrant worker. The other interesting thing is that within the migrant worker, you'll see there is a cluster, which we could call a cluster. For example, in Odisha, from Odisha's Ganjam district, 2 lakh from Ganjam are in Gujarat. More specifically, they are in Surat. So that's how it kind of happens. Now, the interesting thing about migrant workers, you could ask me, is that how do they go? What is the modus operandi, where if a migrant worker wants to go, let's say, from a district in Bengal to Maharashtra. So here there are basically 2 ways. One is the agent, and the other is the word of mouth the migration network, which is, and apparently, I don't have data, but the suggestions are that 7 or 8 out of every 10 go by word of mouth, go by the migration network, and only about 2 out of 10 may use the agents. So what else can I tell you about? I can tell you about rural to urban. For example, you know, the three baskets of a lot of migrant workers go to Mumbai, Delhi, and Surat. Now, those who go to, let's say, Mumbai, Delhi, and Surat, that is typically rural to urban. Whereas those who go to, say, Pune, Bangalore, that is not rural to urban. People who are going there are urban going to another urban. Okay. I haven't given it a lot of thought for the Northeast, but I'm sure if you're in Delhi, as I am, there are a lot of Northeast also people because of the language they speak. And of course, Kerala, you know better, because 30% of the GDP of Kerala is for outbound migrants. Bengal also now of late are having a lot of outbound migrants because of those specialist workers. So these are the kind of thoughts I had on migrants. Now, unfortunately, there's not in Parliament, you see this building at the back, there isn't, in fact, where I am in Delhi now is about maybe half a kilometer from Parliament, just where I'm, just to give you a sense of where I am in Delhi. Now there's only one labor law, which is the Interstate Migrant Worker Act of 1978. If any of you are interested to read the Interstate Migrant Worker Act of 1978. But as I said, the positive is that I hope these issues now come into reality about a migrant policy, about a formal migrant policy between states. Some states may have started a MOU. Then the other problems of how do you address a ration card? Everyone's saying one nation, one ration card, but how does the migrant worker who is in Maharashtra with his permanent address in Bengal, how does he avail of the ration? So that's a problem. Or for example, women migrant workers get the worst deal possible, because even in Anganwadi, you not even get those benefits. Or if somebody is traveling with a child, they would not get the midday meal. So these are the basic issues which need to be addressed. And since I'm talking to a group of young students, that's why I'm staying away from the politics, because I mean, I can make a lot of political points here and saying why this was not done, why that was not done. I'm trying to give you a broad perspective. And if you look at the labor laws in India, there's a labor law. There is no different law for migrant workers. Maybe it's time to look there. Or for example, you know, let me take example of when workers from here go abroad, they have a what do I call it? A preparation, a prep before you go, do's and don'ts. That's if you go abroad. If you go to the Gulf, you go to a lot of, I think Kerala has it, that you have this prep. But here, there is no such pre-departure training. Maybe we should start pre-departure training between states, you know, because the migrant worker is 1/4 of the urban workforce. So these are my thoughts. As I said, these are my thoughts. But the reality is that if you see those pictures, we have really let the migrant worker down. Now, interestingly, there was one chief minister just before Parliament closed. I'm going back to the 3rd week of March. It was the chief minister of West Bengal, Mamata Banerjee, who wrote in March to 18 other chief ministers saying, this was around 20th or 25th of March, just before, during when the first lockdown was about to be announced, is that, hey, listen, what are we going to do with these migrant or guest guest workers. Yeah, but if there's one book you should read on this subject, it's a history of migration by Chinmay Tumbe. By the way, he's not a friend of mine. I've never met him before, so please don't think I'm here to promote his book. No. I interacted with, he interacted with about 10, 12 MPs about 2 weeks ago, and I really liked some of the stuff he put forth. So these are the things on, so I think, and the last point is when the migrants go back, but this is a subject for another discussion. So when the migrants go back, let's say if they want to stay on in their state, what do? My state we've taken, because we're very good with the National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, Manrega. So we've been number 1 for the last 3 years as Bengal. So we're actually trying to get them ways to be part of Manrega. Of course, there are other issues with Manrega, the 210 rupees a day and all need to go up to 300 rupees plus a day. There are all issues on Manrega, but I'm at least getting a sense that after being very negative about Manrega and calling it a scheme to dig holes, at least now the current government has seen some sense in Manrega. So that's it for my thoughts on, I hope I've managed to give you some sense as to what the situation was between March 24th, and then when you shut everything down, and you didn't give the migrant workers time. I gave you those railway numbers, and those are actual railway numbers. Of course, to make matters worse, thankfully my state was different, where the state paid 100% of the tickets of the train fares to bring the migrant workers back. I'm so proud of my state for announcing that. Otherwise, there was total confusion. 85% was supposed to be paid by the center, 15% by the state. Complete mess made of that. Yeah. But then I have to make, I'm not shy here to make and I'm father who has invited me here and all of you. It's, the realization, I'm only going to put the facts. These quickie announcements, dramatic announcements, like demonetization was suddenly boom, 8 p.m. GST implementation, this one also. So planning wasn't good. So anyway, so these are my thoughts on the subject. I'll be more than happy to answer some questions on anything. So you can actually digitally use the digital hands up. There are already hands up. Yeah. Okay, so let's go first with Smriti. Smriti? Yes, Smriti, we have requested you to unmute yourself and ask your question. There's so many hands up. Go ahead, Smriti. Hello. Next person then. Manisha. Host, Mr. Host who is sitting there, please. You can unmute Smriti or Manisha. You have to unmute. No? It's not in my control. The host who's sitting in Mangalore needs to unmute. Yeah.
Derek
Yes.
Jonia.
Yes.
We're not unmuting the participants. I will moderate the questions and I will put it across to you.
Ask me then.
Okay. So the first question is from Kumudini Mishra. She wants to know what steps.
Where is she from? Where is she from?
She's from Utkal University, Odisha.
Okay.
What steps can be taken for sustainable development for migrants?
Well, I think it's a very good question. And I like the word sustainable. I think the first thing is you need to have some laws in place, both at the central level and at the state level. First is you have to have the data in place. That's a good place to start. You have to have data in place if you want to know who's going where, how's going. So first is legislation. Very, very important. You need to relook at the Interstate Migrant Labor Act of 1978. By the way, I was doing some reading on the subject. It's in the Union list of the Constitution. If you look at entry 81, list 1, it talks about and defines an interstate migrant. So we need to go down to the basics, because the legislation is not good. And then if you're only doing politics, like our view, my political party's view on this is very clear. This is not the time for politics. Politics can wait. In Bengal, for example, everywhere else, you've got the challenge of overcoming the COVID. And the other challenge in Bengal we have is the cyclone. So the politics can wait, but sustainability and development is absolutely right. So the first thing is you can do is start with legislation. First thing you can do is make sure the Manrega Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme is available to the migrant workers. Make sure you take make sure they can avail of Manrega, where the minimum daily wage for Manrega is under the daily wage of more than 28 states or 30 states and union territories. So that number has to go up. It's now about 207 or 210 rupees a day. Not good. So that needs to go up. And certain other laws. For example, if I gave you an example of a woman needs to have portability, as in she might want to take her child, the women on the construction sites, for example. So many of them, you see the children running around. Maybe find the midday meal for them. The Anganwadi workers, all the Anganwadi benefits are lost. So these are the kind of situations. And I think states themselves will have to be working out more MOUs. Yeah, thanks. That was a good question.
The next question is from Reverend Father Joy James.
Where?
And
Where? I'm very inquisitive to know where.
He's in Bangalore. He's the Secretary of Jesuits in Higher Education.
Very nice. Okay. So don't yes, Father.
So his question is, can we say that most legislators were not aware of the plight of migrant workers until the lockdown? Is not the reason that we have no new laws to protect the rights of migrant workers since 1978?
Well, firstly, I must mention, since you said Jesuits and the education, let it be said that the Jesuits, wherever they are in the world, are so well known for the great education they do. And before I answer Father's question, and the other good example the Jesuits set, and so many others, is that the education happens irrespective of which religion you come for, which caste, which creed. So I think that's a very good example for so many others to follow. You know, Ramakrishna Mission is another very good example also. It doesn't matter what religion you are, but they do good education. Yes, I think your question is absolutely valid. I mean, that is what I think. I wouldn't agree with Father when he says all legislators, but yes, I'm afraid many public servants, and I'm like muzzled. I want to say it, but I need to say it, of course. So the people who announced the 21-day lockdown with a 4-hour notice and said, don't step out of your house, they hadn't thought it through. I'm so proud of my chief minister who wrote that letter. You know, we were the first people who wore a mask in Parliament also in the middle of March, but this wasn't thought out. I'm afraid it wasn't thought out. So the question is very valid. And some of the governments who did think it out, like Bengal, that's why that was announced. That's why the 1,000 rupees into the bank account was announced for 1 lakh workers. That's the way it was. But the state governments were caught by surprise, but they really did as best as they could to host the other workers. But putting them back on a train after 50 days, I mean, it's completely bizarre. If you see those pictures, they'll scare you. Yes, next question.
Yeah, Derek, this is from Professor Stephen Deepak from Christu Jayanti College, Bangalore.
Yeah, I don't mind taking questions, but I think, but also get some students to ask the questions. Yeah, thank you.
The next one is from a student.
Okay, yes, Professor.
Does the guest worker issue reflect the deep caste divide and the upper caste class hegemony in recent years that has led to the ill treatment of the poor that has made the workers migrate? Is there a sense that the central government's attitude and support clandestinely supports the upper caste groups and has been anti-minority?
I think a lot of the answer is in the question. But I don't think this is a minority and majority issue. I think this is a people issue, yes. Because I think this has made this entire caste, the social divide. You give your MPs 48 hours notice to fly back to their constituencies. And yet, you give the guest worker 4 hours notice. Where's the thinking? Where is the conscience? Suddenly you pack them off into 80 trains. And so there is there's so much in that question which is there, but there's so much in the question which is there. And there's a fabulous article I read. I can't remember where. Yes. On this caste issue and letting them down. So the gentleman who asked the question can also refer to that article. I think it was written on NDTV, and it was written by. There's an article in NDTV on their opinion page. I think it was written by a lady Chitranga and somebody else. But read it. I read it. It's very interesting, and it talks about this issue in detail. I'm trying to pull it up on my phone to kind of go ahead. Next question.
Okay, this is from Anag, who's a student and wants to know the dilemma of the migrant workers at the interstate levels is to leave or not leave the place. How can the government make them understand and ask them to take a right decision? And how can the rights of these people during the crisis be taken care of and ensured?
Yeah, Anand asked a very good question, because in reality, their rights, etc., were not taken care of. Their rights, etc., were not taken care of, and that's why we are in this horrible situation. You got to understand that. Listen. We need to understand this, and I'm saying this for you to come to your own conclusions. Everyone is saying this issue should have been handled between the state governments and the central governments. Yes. Here's my only question. But before I ask the question, I will answer Anand's part of his question by saying the state government is always the implementing authority. So when you come into my state, I've got to check you. I've got to make sure the border is correct. So it's all the state government, right? Here's my question. Before you announced the 21-day lockdown with 4 hours notice, Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. Home Minister, how many chief ministers did you consult? How many? Sadly, none. There lies the problem. Next question.
This is from another student, Mohammed Jafar. He wants to know, is reverse migration going to affect the economy?
It's not only reverse migration which is going to affect the economy. This lockdown, total lockdown, some states didn't accept the lockdown, total lockdown. We always had a partial lockdown. Economy is going to be affected. I don't think the reverse migration will, any kind of migrant, those who've gone back, till they see that the wages have improved, they're not going to move. And in any case, July, August monsoon, then coming up with the Chhat Puja, I don't think they are in a mood to move. So perhaps there will be a wage increase. Talking about the economy, World Bank data was out this morning. Perhaps you've seen, some of you haven't seen it because it's out like late last night, this morning. I mean, those numbers are, what do they say? They say Brazil -8 GDP, US -6 GDP, and India minus 3.2 GDP. India and Nigeria. Then you go to China with 0, and then the rest are all +1, +2. So it's a big, big mess because, as I said, we are the only country in the world which is now going for unlock when the numbers are still going up. In all the other 6 or 7 countries, when the numbers were plateauing, then you went for the unlock and the numbers came down. But I think, you know, the earlier question, which I should have also added about the person who asked me the question on caste, I think this whole thing is also a big, it's a real wake-up call, because these are the people who built our multi-storied hotels, they've built our homes, they've built the fancy buildings in the cities. This is not the way you treat them. Okay, next question. You can go beyond migrant if you want to ask some questions. Generally, I'm okay. We are on for another 11 minutes. Father Principal.
Yeah.
And 11 o'clock we'll finish, we said, so great.
Yes, that's fine. Yes.
Yes.
Oh.
So this is from the University of Kashmir. And one of the students wants to know, how did media justify their modus operandi in highlighting the plight of guest workers? And did they really do what they were supposed to do?
Well,
Since you've been
whoever,
in the media.
well, whoever the student is from Kashmir, firstly, on behalf of all of us, a very, very warm welcome to you. And it's fabulous that thanks to technology, we have Odisha, Mangalore, Kashmir, maybe Kanyakumari also. I think I'm glad you've asked me this question. But I've got to be a little, I don't know whether to be, yeah, well, I'm always very frank. Most of the media, or what we know as the traditional media, and this is what I want to appeal to young people today especially, the traditional media has let us down. There are some notable exceptions, I know, but I think lots in the real stories have come from the digital space. You know, I don't want to name one journalist or 2 journalists, but I think that is the reality. The media owners have a huge role to play, and young people have to question that. Politicians, ask us the questions. We are accountable. You don't like us, you'll vote us out after 5 years. You like us, you'll vote us back after 5 years. You know, as Mamtadi was saying, please don't disturb me now with my 2021 election in Bengal. I'm not bothered about that. I'm not bothered about how to overcome COVID for my people and Cyclone Amphan for my people. Now, the media owners have a role to play. You yourself know what's going on. This is really sad. I want to make a very important point here on beyond migrant workers. In a situation like this, you must remember, these are not normal times because we've got the National Disaster Management Act, which is in place now. That's the National Disaster Management Act. The act is in place, so the states already have some restricted movement, lots. In all this, young people of India, we must protect and fight for our civil liberties. We must. Otherwise, we can be in for when institutions of this country are tampered with, including the media, that's the time we need to be very, very careful. And my friend from Kashmir, the young man from Kashmir, or was it a young lady from Kashmir who asked the question? Yeah, to put it very bluntly, boy, oh boy, the media cannot be, let's put it this way, the media has to speak truth to power. And this is what I really urge the media always to do, speak truth to power.
Derek, there's another question coming from Uttar Pradesh.
This is a full tour of India, huh? Odisha, yeah. Uttar Pradesh, yeah, go ahead.
The UP government has decided to establish a migrant workers commission. This is to regulate the movement of migrant workers. Yeah. Please give us your opinion on this.
No, they've formulated the Migrant Workers Commission. I've also heard that you'll have to take permission if you're in UP to leave. That other state has to ask for permission. I haven't read the document, so it will not be fair to make any comment. But any implementable migrant policy, any MOU between states, any legislation at the central at Parliament, yes, we can study that and look ahead. One of the things is, of course, is make sure in whatever you do that wherever they are, they receive all their benefits.
I think we just have time for the last question, Derek.
No, you can ask me one or two more questions, no problem. I'll give short answers.
Oh, okay. So this is from Patna University. Will the central government issue any concrete guidelines for this? This is, I think, in line with what the UP government is doing, but this is again, is the central government going to do?
This is not about guidelines. This is about will to do. Mamata Banerjee did not have any guidelines when she decided to put 1,000 rupees into every migrant worker's bank account. Mamata Banerjee or the Bengal Chief Minister didn't have any guidelines when in the second week of March, she announced before anybody else that, listen, we are going to have a crisis, but before that, no one will starve to death. No one will go hungry. Why? Because I'm going to transfer ration, with ration card, without ration card. 8 crore people will get ration for 6 months. Or 10 lakh each insurance to a healthcare worker. So guidelines, I think states have to take their own initiatives. And since you mentioned you're from Patna and Bihar, I think Bihar has a huge responsibility because it's a huge issue. And you also have to remember Bihar is coming in for election in the next few months. So it's going to become a political hot potato also. But I think everyone, like Bengal government has taken a decision, any migrant worker who's come back, register for the Manrega program and put the money in the bank account. And I think this government, what they need to do, and they need to do this fast, they need to get direct money into the bank account, because otherwise if the economy goes down, you'll never be able to pull it out. So councils are fine, having some guidelines are fine, but we have to see the color of money. And money means it has to go directly from the government into the bank account, 10,000 rupees each. Do it now is my message to them. 4 minutes more.
Yeah. This is again from a student from the University of Kashmir School of Law. And he says that, has not judiciary failed to protect the fundamental right to life of the migrant workers? So in other words, has not the judiciary...
I actually forgot to mention this, and I'm glad he's asked me the question. Please go and you'll do some further reading, because I don't like as a politician or a member of parliament to make direct comments, but you look at what the Supreme Court said round about end of March, and all the submissions made to the Supreme Court that there were no migrant workers on the roads. What are you talking about? So please read that. I don't think we have enough time on this platform for me to give you all the details, but you can read that. Maybe now it's too little, too late.
Yeah, I think that was the last question, because there's so many.
That was the last question?
Yeah, because there's so many questions coming in. I don't think.
अरे एक दो पूछो ना क्या है?
पूछती हूँ, रुक जाओ. Okay, where do we have to see the statistics of the guest workers? Which department is responsible to collect that database of these poor laborers? Because as of now, we don't have them.
You know, firstly, I don't think this word poor laborers, they are not, I mean, the adjective poor itself, these are highly skilled. Some of these are highly skilled people. So let's not firstly be condescending and look at them with, some condescension. Some of them are very highly skilled people. Most of the states don't have this data. Most of the states don't have this data. There has to be data. There has to be data. There has to be systems. Because my only wish today is you do all this later. To get the data, you have their pre-departure training, you have legislation, you have commissions, you set all this up. Do all this. But first, and this is not Derek O'Brien, Trinamool parliamentary party leader of Rajya Sabha, who's saying this. No, every economist in the world is saying this. So when you come up with these packages and say, the package is X% of GDP and Y% of GDP, nonsense, nonsense. And I think the last point I want to make is in all this, listen, nobody is perfect. We are running the government in Bengal with cyclone and COVID. Do you think we are perfect? Of course not. Of course not. We make mistakes. We course correct. We say we got this little wrong, we're going to do this a little differently. Nothing wrong in that. Our testing numbers were low early. Then we got, instead of 2 testing centers, we went to 42 testing centers. And how we managed to do all that. The issue here is, and this is the thought I want to leave, especially with the young people, and this is beyond politics. This is beyond migrant and guest workers. There has to be humility. Humility. You're not going to get everything right. Why didn't you course correct? When 24th of March, when you announced the lockdown and you saw the lockdown was going nowhere, you announced those buses, course correct, be humble, say, listen, we didn't get it right. We did our event management. We didn't object to you. We didn't like the idea. We thought it was a bizarre idea, non-scientific. One day you will like Diaz. The next day you'll go and bang. I'm not saying people, if you want to do it, do it. We didn't say not to do it. We said if we wouldn't do. The humility, and I think this is the last message I want to leave with all of you this Friday morning. Forget everything else I said, if you want to, and some of it which Chinmay gave me gyan about, Chinmay Tumbe. But that humility needs to be there in everything that you do. Whether it doesn't matter who you are and how big a politician you are. And I think that was really missing in the way this problem was approached. Before I end, I want to sincerely thank St. Aloysius College University in Mangalore. I'm completely blown away that we had questions from Kashmir, from Orissa, from UP, from Bihar, from other southern states, and absolutely wonderful. I enjoyed doing this. I just wonder, maybe I should do this more often with other universities. This is my first kind of interaction with this.